I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this. You hear about it, you see it on TV, but you never think it'll happen to you. My name is Tom, and I was married to Rachel for nearly 7 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but we got through them. Or so I thought. It all started when Rachel began showing subtle signs that something was off. She became more elusive, often glued to her phone, which, I admit, I didn't think much of at first. I mean, who doesn't scroll through social media these days? But then I noticed her texting more and smiling at her screen like a high school girl. She would giggle at something and quickly lock her phone when I walked into the room. I brushed it off as her just being playful, maybe chatting with friends, but an uneasy feeling started to creep in. One night, I came home from work earlier than usual to surprise her. I was excited to spend some quality time together, but when I walked into our apartment, it was eerily quiet. I called out for her, but there was no answer. I headed to the bedroom, and that's when I saw it. Her phone was sitting on the bed, and the screen lit up with a message from someone named Jake. I picked it up, heart pounding in my chest, and that's when my world began to crumble. The message read, "I miss you so much. I wish you were here with me right now." I felt bile rise in my throat, my gut twisted into knots. Rachel had always said she'd never go back to any of her exes, but here I was, staring at this evidence that suggested otherwise. I put the phone down, trying to collect my thoughts, but the air felt thick and my mind was racing. Did she really think I wouldn't find out? When she finally came home, I was ready. I confronted her right then and there. I wanted to stay calm, but my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I asked her about Jake, and she played it off as if it were nothing. "Oh, he's just a friend from college," she said, shrugging it off. But I wasn't buying it. I pushed her for the truth, and finally she cracked. The expression on her face morphed from nonchalance to fear. Okay, I'll admit it, he's my ex. But it's nothing, Tom, you have to believe me, I love you," she pleaded. I wanted to believe her words, but as she spoke I could see the cracks in her facade. The panic in her eyes, the way she averted her gaze, it all told a different story. As I pressed her further, I could see the excuses tumble out. "We just talk sometimes. He's going through a tough time and I'm just being supportive." The more she talked, the more I felt the anger bubbling inside me. "Supportive?" I shot back. "It sounds like you're using that as a cover for something else. Are you sleeping with him?" Her silence spoke volumes. I felt as if my heart had been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. The betrayal hurt more than I could have ever imagined. I had given her everything, and here she was, lying through her teeth. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. But instead I stood there, a lump in my throat, feeling like a complete fool. The emotional impact was overwhelming. I had trusted her, loved her unconditionally, and in that moment I realized that the foundation of our marriage was built on lies. I had to process this betrayal, the realization that the woman I loved had been pursuing someone else. I felt anger mixed with heartbreak, a cocktail of emotions that left me reeling. My mind raced through every moment we had shared, every promise we had made to each other. Were they all a lie? As I stood there, grappling with the pain, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine while the woman I loved was off with her ex. I needed to figure out what I wanted, what I deserved. But for now, all I could do was sit in that moment, staring at Rachel, who was looking at me with pleading eyes, desperate for forgiveness that I was far from ready to give. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I was living in a fog, going through the motions of daily life while my world felt like it was crumbling around me. Rachel moved about the apartment, trying to act as if nothing had changed, but I could see the anxiety in her eyes. Every time she touched me, I flinched, recoiling at the thought of her hands that had been on another man. I spent hours grappling with my feelings. Rationally, I knew that I should confront her again, dig deeper into the truth, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I buried myself in work, focusing on the mundane tasks that kept my mind off the turmoil. But eventually, the truth clawed its way back to the surface. One evening, I returned home to find Rachel on the phone again, her voice low and teasing. I stood at the door, listening, my fists clenched at my sides. I could hear snippets of conversation, laughter, and that same familiar giggle. My heart raced. After a few moments, she ended the call, quickly shoving her phone into her purse when she saw me standing there. "What's up?" she asked, too cheerfully, as if she hadn't just been caught in the act. I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Was that Jake?" I asked, my voice low and steady, trying to mask my fury. She hesitated for a moment, her smile faltering. "Just a friend, Tom, you know how it is," she replied, but the edge in her voice betrayed her. I could see the guilt written all over her face. "Cut the crap, Rachel, I know you're lying." I stepped closer, my heart pounding with anger. "You need to stop pretending. I heard you, and you need to tell me the truth." Her facade cracked and her expression shifted from defensiveness to uncertainty. Okay, I was talking to him, but it's not what you think, we're just catching up." I felt my heart shatter again, each piece slicing deeper into my chest. "Catching up? Rachel, you told me you'd never look back. You promised me that you'd let him go." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and I could see her scrambling for the right words, but I was done listening to her excuses. "You know what? I can't do this anymore. You need to figure out what you want." As I said the words, a part of me knew I was standing at a precipice, a decision point that would change everything. After she left the room, I felt a mix of relief and dread. I took to my phone and started looking up articles on infidelity and betrayal. Each piece resonated with the pain I was feeling, but I couldn't find the answers I needed. I knew I didn't want to be the victim of this situation. I wanted to take control, to find a way to reclaim my dignity and self-respect. I decided to gather information to confirm my suspicions. I started by observing Rachel's behavior more closely. I noted the times she went out for errands or the late nights she claimed were work-related. Each excuse sounded weaker than the last. I even took to secretly checking her phone when she left it unattended. I found messages, flirty exchanges that made my stomach turn. As I pieced together the puzzle, it became evident that this wasn't just an emotional affair, it was physical. I felt sick, realizing that the woman who I thought I knew, who I had shared my life with, had become someone unrecognizable. It was as if I was watching a horror movie that I couldn't walk away from. I couldn't let this continue. I needed a plan, a course of action that would not only expose her deception, but also allow me to regain my sense of self. It was time to show her that I wasn't just going to sit back and take it. I wouldn't let her walk all over me. With a newfound determination, I began formulating a plan for revenge. It wasn't about being vindictive. It was about reclaiming my power and showing Rachel that she couldn't have both of us. It would be a calculated move, one that would not only expose her infidelity, but also serve as a wake-up call to the reality of her choices. I was tired of feeling like the victim. It was time to take action. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. The idea of doing something proactive made me feel alive again. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of betrayal lift slightly as I prepared to execute my plan. I was done being the fool. Now I was stepping into control. I spent the next few days plotting my revenge. This wasn't about being petty or cruel. It was about making Rachel understand the consequences of her actions. I wanted to expose her lies and show her that she couldn't have it all. I felt a strange mix of excitement and anxiety as I brainstormed ideas. First, I decided to gather evidence. I started documenting her behavior, the late-night texts, the unexplained outings, and the shift in her demeanor when she was around me. Each time I caught her in a lie, I made a note of it. I had to be careful, though. I didn't want her to suspect what I was planning. With that in mind, I decided to enlist the help of a friend, Jake, who was always reliable. He had a knack for tech and was skilled at gathering information without raising alarms. I reached out to him, explaining my situation without going into too much detail. "I just need you to help me keep an eye on Rachel," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I think she's cheating on me, and I want to know for sure." Jake was supportive and instantly on board. "I've got your back, man. We'll figure this out." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. With Jake's help, I felt more empowered to dig deeper. In the days that followed, Jake helped me set up a few discreet surveillance measures. He suggested installing a small camera in the living room where we had a view of the main entrance. I hesitated at first. It felt a bit extreme. But I needed proof, something concrete that would validate my suspicions and give me the upper hand. Once that was in place, I turned my attention to other aspects of my plan. I started changing my routine. I worked late a few nights and spent weekends at the gym. I wanted to give Rachel the impression that I was busy, that I had a life outside of our relationship. I hoped that would lead her to let her guard down, to feel comfortable enough to slip up. It wasn't long before I got my first break. One night I was at the gym when Jake texted me. "I think she's with him." I just saw her leave the apartment with a guy. My heart raced at the words. I didn't need to ask who the guy was. I could feel anger rising in my chest, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I decided to head home. I arrived just as Rachel was coming back, laughing and talking with Jake. I felt the fury boil over, but I forced myself to remain composed. I stepped into the apartment with a neutral expression, though inside I was seething. "Hey, how was your night?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She jumped slightly, caught off guard. "Oh, just went out for drinks with some friends," she said quickly, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to call her out right there, to tell her I knew about Jake and to make her squirm, but I held back. I wanted to wait for the right moment to confront her when I had all the evidence lined up. Instead, I decided to act as if nothing was wrong. The next day, I met up with Jake to review the footage from the camera. My heart raced as we sat in his living room, the dim light casting shadows on the walls. As we clicked through the recordings, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I watched Rachel walk in and out, often with that same guy, laughing, whispering, and leaning a little too close. Each moment I watched felt like a stab to the gut. Then came the moment that shattered whatever hope I had left. A video showed Rachel leaning in to kiss Jake goodbye, a quick peck on the lips that seemed casual, but it hit me like a freight train. I felt the tears prick my eyes, the pain of betrayal hitting me hard. "Tom, I'm so sorry," Jake said, noticing my reaction. "I can't believe she would do this to you." I nodded, my anger and hurt boiling over. "This is it. I have to confront her now. She's crossed the line." With the evidence in hand, I returned home, emotions swirling inside me. I felt powerful but also scared. I knew this confrontation would change everything, but I needed her to see what she had done. I needed to make her realize that her actions had consequences. When I walked in, Rachel was lounging on the couch, her phone in hand, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I didn't want to lose my cool. I needed to be calm, collected. "Rachel, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked up, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. "About what?" I took a moment, gathering my thoughts. "About Jake." The moment I uttered his name, I could see her demeanor shift. She put her phone down and sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone, ready to display the evidence that would shatter her lies. "I have video evidence of you with him. The kiss, the flirting, it's all right here. You can't deny it anymore." Her face paled as I played the video, each frame hitting her with a wave of reality. I watched as the confidence she had wielded crumbled before my eyes. The truth was finally out, and I was ready to face the consequences. The video played on repeat in my mind, each frame a dagger, every giggle and kiss a reminder of the betrayal I'd felt. As I watched Rachel's face change from confusion to denial, I braced myself for the storm. "Tom, this is a misunderstanding," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I can." Explain what, Rachel?" "That you've been lying to me." I shot back, my voice rising. "That you've been sneaking around with your ex while I'm out busting my ass at work." The hurt began to morph into a mix of anger and disbelief. I couldn't believe how deeply she had hurt me, how she had taken all the love I had for her and tossed it aside like it meant nothing. "I swear it's not what you think," she pleaded, but I was done listening to her excuses. I had seen enough. "You say you love me, yet here you are, hiding behind your lies. How can I trust anything you say?" I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the hurt bubbling beneath the surface, threatening to spill over. "Please just let me explain," she insisted, but I was past the point of wanting to hear her justifications. The anger coursing through me was too strong to ignore. "What's there to explain?" I spat. "You've made your choice, Rachel. You chose him." Each word felt like a punch, striking her down further until finally she crumbled. I watched as the bravado she'd held onto melted away, replaced by raw vulnerability. I made a mistake, okay, she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. It was just a moment of weakness. I never meant to hurt you. I wanted to scream at her to make her feel the pain she had caused me. A moment of weakness. You think that justifies this? You've been lying to me for how long? The disbelief was palpable, and I could feel my heart racing, tearing between anger and sadness. Tom, please, she begged, her voice breaking. I was confused. I never stopped loving you. I thought I could handle it. I thought it would just be talking. But the moment she said those words, the truth of her feelings hung heavy in the air. She never stopped loving him. I couldn't process the betrayal. My stomach twisted into knots. You think you can just waltz back into my life after this? After everything? No, Rachel. You don't get to have it both ways. I could feel the tears threatening to spill over, and I quickly wiped them away, angry at myself for letting her see the effect her words had on me. She reached out, but I stepped back, needing to create distance, needing to create space. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You've broken everything we built together. The weight of those words hung between us, a chasm that felt impossible to bridge. I'll do anything, Tom, just give me a chance to fix this, she cried out, desperate. But the thought of trusting her again felt like a death sentence for my sanity. I knew I couldn't do it. What's left to fix? I replied. You've shattered my trust, and I'm not sure I can ever look at you the same way again. Rachel fell silent at that, her face crumpling as the reality of her situation sank in. I could see it in her eyes, the realization that she had lost me. I was no longer the oblivious husband who would forgive and forget. I was ready to make my stand. Tom, please, she whispered, her voice barely audible, filled with regret. I'll end things with him, I swear. It was a hollow promise, a plea from a woman who had already shown she couldn't be trusted. I shook my head. You can't just sweep this under the rug. The damage is done. The room felt heavy with silence. I could see the tears streaming down her cheeks, and a part of me felt for her, but I couldn't allow myself to get lost in that compassion. The reality was I needed to protect myself now. I needed to think about what was best for me. I think it's best if you move out, I said, my voice firm. The words hung in the air like a final judgment. I watched as her expression changed from shock to despair. You can't be serious, she whispered, her voice cracking. After everything we've been through, I echoed, incredulous. You mean everything you've put me through? This isn't love, Rachel, this is betrayal. I can't do this anymore. Her sobs filled the room, and in that moment I felt an unexpected pang of sadness wash over me. It was a grief for what had been, a marriage that I thought was built on love and trust, now reduced to ashes. I knew it was time to end it, to reclaim myself and my dignity. I need space, I need to think. And I think it's best if you find another place to stay, I said, my voice unwavering. It felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, but I could see the impact of my words crushing her. Tom, please don't do this, she begged, but I stood firm. It's over, Rachel, please just go. As she gathered her things, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, and at that moment I knew I had made the right choice. As she walked out the door, I felt a new sense of determination. I would move forward without her, stronger and more resilient. I would focus on healing and reclaiming my life. The betrayal hurt, but I was ready to rise from the ashes. The days that followed Rachel's departure were a blur of emotion. I was filled with a mix of relief, sadness, and anger. I spent the first few nights sleepless, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while replaying the events over and over in my mind. I could still hear her voice pleading with me not to end things, but I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't allow her betrayal to define me or our relationship any longer. Friends reached out, concerned about my well-being. They encouraged me to talk, to vent, but I often found it hard to articulate what I was feeling. It felt like a gaping hole in my chest where love and trust had once lived, but it was now filled with bitterness and resentment. I felt isolated, trapped in my own thoughts, grappling with the emotional fallout of Rachel's infidelity. In an attempt to regain some normalcy, I threw myself into work. I focused on projects that needed my attention, pushing myself to be as productive as possible. I wanted to bury myself in tasks, anything to distract my mind from the pain. My coworkers noticed my intensity, and although they praised my work ethic, I could see the concern on their faces. They wanted to help, but I was too proud to admit just how shattered I felt inside. Then one day, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Jake. He was leaning against his car, waiting for me. "Hey man, you doing okay?" he asked, genuine concern etched across his face. I sighed, the weight of the past few weeks coming crashing down on me. "Not really, I've just been trying to keep busy." "Do you want to grab a drink, talk about it?" he offered. I hesitated for a moment but then nodded. I needed an outlet, someone who understood what I was going through, even if just a bit. We ended up at a local bar, the kind of dimly lit place with cheap drinks and a relaxed vibe. Jake ordered a couple of beers and we settled into a corner booth. I took a deep breath, ready to unload. "I thought my marriage was solid, you know. I thought we had something real." I started, letting the words spill out. "But then she goes and throws it all away for some guy she claimed she'd never love again. It's just devastating." My voice broke slightly and I could feel the sting of tears at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Jake listened intently, nodding as I spoke. "It's okay to feel hurt, Tom. You've been through a lot. It's a huge betrayal, and it's going to take time to heal." Poured me another beer and I took a long swig, letting the alcohol warm me up a bit. "I just don't understand how she could do this to me. I was always there for her. I gave her everything," I said, shaking my head. "And now she's out there living her life while I'm stuck here feeling like a fool." "It's not your fault," Jake said firmly. "You can't control her choices. You were being the best partner you could be, and that's all that matters. She made her bed and now she has to lie in it." His words resonated with me. I had been so wrapped up in blaming myself that I hadn't taken a moment to recognize that Rachel had made her own choices, and I wasn't responsible for her actions. I felt a flicker of strength growing within me, a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in weeks. As we talked more, I started to share my plan for moving forward. "I think I need to focus on myself for a while," I confessed. "I want to rebuild, to find out who I am outside of this marriage." Jake nodded, encouraging me to pursue hobbies I'd neglected and to connect with friends I hadn't seen in a while. "Why not take a trip somewhere, clear your head and give yourself a break?" he suggested. The idea intrigued me. Maybe I needed a change of scenery, a way to distance myself from the memories that haunted me. I resolved to look into booking a weekend getaway, to allow myself to heal away from the weight of my past. By the end of the night, I felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. I was beginning to understand that healing wouldn't happen overnight, but every small step I took would lead me closer to reclaiming my life. I realized that I had a choice here. I could let Rachel's betrayal define me, or I could take back my power. As I left the bar, a sense of hope swelled within me. I wasn't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was on the right path. I had friends who cared, a plan to move forward, and a newfound determination to prioritize my own happiness. Rachel was no longer the center of my universe, and that was exactly how it needed to be. As I climbed into my car, I made a promise to myself. I would rise from this experience stronger and more resilient. I would not allow betrayal to break me. Instead, it would become a stepping stone to a better version of myself. I was ready to let go of the past and embrace whatever the future held. The days turned into weeks, and I began to feel a shift within myself. I focused on the things that brought me joy, taking small steps towards embracing life again. I started attending yoga classes, which not only helped me physically but also provided a soothing space for my mind. It became a ritual, a time for reflection and healing. I found myself enjoying the stillness, the practice of grounding myself, allowing the chaos of my emotions to settle. I also reached out to old friends, reconnecting with people I had neglected during my time with Rachel. We went out for coffee, caught up on life, and shared laughs that felt genuine and light. I realized how much I had missed these connections and how important they were for my overall well-being. One weekend, I finally booked that getaway, a trip to a cabin in the mountains. It was isolated but beautiful, surrounded by nature and tranquility. I spent my days hiking, taking in the fresh air and reflecting on everything that had happened. I wrote in a journal, pouring out my thoughts and feelings, and for the first time I felt a sense of closure creeping in. As I hiked through the trails, I thought about Rachel and the chaos she had brought into my life. I realized that while her actions had hurt me deeply, they had also opened my eyes to my own strength. I was no longer defined by my marriage or her betrayal. I was carving out a new identity for myself, one that was grounded in resilience and self-worth. On the last night of my trip, I sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains. The sky was painted with brilliant hues of orange and pink, and I felt a wave of peace wash over me. I reflected on my journey, the heartbreak, the anger, and finally, the healing. I had navigated through the storm and had come out on the other side stronger than I ever thought I could be. When I returned home, I knew I had to make one final step in closing this chapter of my life. I reached out to Rachel, asking if we could meet. I wanted to have an honest conversation to find closure not just for her but for myself as well. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply ready to move forward. When we met at a coffee shop, I could see the weight of guilt in her eyes. She looked different, more subdued, reflective. "I'm really sorry, Tom," she said as we sat down. "I know I hurt you and I can't take it back." "I know," I replied, and it felt strangely freeing to say those words. "But I've been working on myself since the breakup. I've realized that I deserve better and I'm not willing to accept anything less." Rachel nodded, her expression softening. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too. I was selfish and I thought I could have it all without consequences. I've realized how wrong I was." We talked for a while, sharing our perspectives and acknowledging the pain we had caused each other. In that moment, I felt a sense of peace washing over me. I wasn't holding on to anger anymore. I was ready to forgive, not for her sake, but for my own. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I walked away with the knowledge that I had taken control of my life and my happiness. The experience had changed me, and I was grateful for the lessons learned, even if they came at a high cost. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, rediscovered my passions, and reconnected with friends. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to focus on my journey, embracing the unknown and exploring new opportunities. I even started dating again, slowly opening my heart to the possibility of love. Each connection I made was a reminder that I was worthy of happiness. I learned that life is unpredictable, filled with twists and turns that can lead to unexpected growth. I had faced betrayal, but I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I chose to rise, to forge my path, and to embrace the freedom that came with letting go of the past. In the end, I walked away from that chapter of my life not as a victim of betrayal, but as a survivor, a man who had found his strength and reclaimed his happiness. I was excited for what the future held, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the power to shape my own destiny.